Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of this event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. None of what we do could be possible without all of the amazing support from our sponsors. We are humbled by their contributions. During these unique times, we are curious how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with in our community. We would like to start by taking 2 different polls to let us know how you are feeling about your business right now. Poll number 1 launching. How are you currently feeling? Are you feeling fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Please let us know. Sharing those results, it looks like we have a lot of optimism in the room currently. Thank you all for sharing that. And our second poll, what is currently keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, marketing? Is it scaling, pivoting, your team, or surviving? All right, sharing those results. Currently, scaling is highest among what is keeping you all up at night. And it looks like in a close second, sales, finance, and marketing. Thank you all so much for filling those out. We are so grateful. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest, Erich Joachimsthaler, author of The Interaction Field and founder, CEO of Vivaldi. Thank you so much, Erich, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you here. We're so grateful. So let's just dive in. I have so many great questions from our audience as well, and from our book. So let's just dive right on in. And so Erich, tell me something that's true that almost no one agrees with you on.
Well, I think what you see right now, most startups, 60% of unicorns are platforms or digital ecosystems. 8 out of the upcoming 13 IPOs are platform and digital ecosystem based. And those business models are red hot right now. The fangers are on the top of the stock market. Growing its market capitalization. Apple, an example, has added $1 trillion to market cap. And I think that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the business model that will work.
So interesting, Erich. I know that, and we're here to talk about really specifically the models that are within your book. So I'm actually really curious. Can you tell us about the interaction field model? You know, how can founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs create that unstoppable velocity that you speak about in your book within their company right now?
Absolutely. Here's what happens. Platforms and digital ecosystems are really good models, obviously. They've been successful. They are very successful for some companies. But for the most part, to me at least, platforms and ecosystems is just another variation of competition. We used to compete on pipelines, pushing out products. Now we do platforms and digital ecosystem. That's all fine, except most of the attempts to become a platform and ecosystem fail. 85% of, and there are 3 studies that just were published recently, 85% of platforms and ecosystems never scale, and this was the #1 question you had from the audience right now, and #2 are not sustainable over a few years.
So interesting, and I love how our current audience, like you said, is thinking about scaling. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's one of our largest questions and biggest questions consistently from our community. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
when it comes to big tech platforms, they claim that they would make the world a better place. Yet consumers and regulators, we find, are increasingly frustrated by them. So why have these platforms not delivered? And in addition to that, what would interaction field companies do differently?
Yeah, I call interaction field companies that look at all the stakeholders, that look at all the possible interactions, let's say. It's almost like an interaction field. Platforms and ecosystems are still self-serving. They serve, if you will, the customer and by that the shareholders in some ways. But when you build an interaction field company, you look at all the contingencies, all the interactions that really drive value creation, and that's the huge difference. So if you think of an example, Airbnb, which is one of the upcoming IPOs, that clearly that's a platform and a digital ecosystem. But by building such a system, they only focus on their ecosystem partners, and they focus only on customers and value creation, lower prices perhaps for staying in a flat here in New York or somewhere else. But they are not really looking at all the total value creation and what influences the value of a business.
Very interesting. So what an interaction field company might do differently versus, let's say, an example of Airbnb. What would be an example of something that an interaction field company would do?
I think a good example. See, a traditional company platform ecosystem. Take an example with Amazon. Amazon recently said that they will spend $10 million toward a diversity effort. And that's really welcome. That's a real great effort. But that's also a nice gesture only after the fact, after it has made massive profits or has created massive shareholder value for Jeff Bezos and value for everyone else. If you build an interaction field company, you're not just talking about shared value creation, you're not just talking about sharing out value, you actually build it part of the business model. Think of an example. A recent IPO is a startup company called Lemonade. Lemonade, when you saw, that's a fintech company, 6 months ago, I think, actually 3 months ago they came out. A fintech company, a homeowners insurance. What they do is when you sign up as a consumer, the business model is that you also need to sign up for sharing excess policy profits with 92 charities or something. So the business, it is the model of creating shared value is not a model that is only an after the fact, it is built in the business model.
Wonderful, Eric. And actually that partially answers the next question that we have from our audience. So what is one of your favorite examples of an interaction field company that is doing it right? And in addition to that, what are some key learnings, maybe 2 to 3 key learnings that early stage founders and entrepreneurs can build off of? Yeah,
maybe I talk about an example that I actually have in the book. We are around here in Flatiron district area here in New York City. Company here is called Flatiron Health. 2 guys, 24 years old. They set out and says, there's something wrong the way we solve cancer is treated right now. Every cancer hospital, every doctor has their own drugs, their own ways of treatment, and there is very little sharing, very little sharing. If it is between doctors, that's possible sometimes. Across hospital, it never happens. So they set out and says, could we build a model where we actually track exactly what a doctor does when he treats a cancer patient? 18 million cancer patients every year get diagnosed with patient. Every American, 18 million Americans get diagnosed with cancer. What happens is, so in over 1,000 hospitals, Flatiron Health has abstractors, people that walk behind the doctors and write down the exact treatment plan, all the information about the patients. Flatiron aggregates those data across all the hospitals and shares those data back to hospitals and to doctors. Doctors can learn from other doctors in California, from a New York doctor, can learn what has worked, has not worked. Here is how it gets exciting. Because in a way, it's just a data play, and a more accurate data play maybe than an electronic health record. Here's how it gets exciting. Flatiron Health takes the data and shares it with the pharmaceutical companies, competitors that produce the drugs and push the drugs to the doctors. And here is the amazing thing they found out, is sometimes for some patient and for some cancer conditions, you need a drug, and for others, you don't need a drug at all. You can actually, through some alternative therapies, you can actually work. Now, here is where the interaction field comes in. Flatiron Health also shares those data with the drug administration, US Drug Administration, that is the approval authority for all the drugs. And guess what happens? Now the drug authority is approving the drugs much faster for certain conditions, which actually saves real lives. So Flatiron Health isn't a platform. It isn't a digital ecosystem. It's an interaction field that is based on data, interaction, and participation of the entire, if you will, cancer community, the providers, the payers, the patients, and the authorities that regulate it. And what it really does, it actually saves lives, because drugs are approved for certain health conditions. They would not be approved for many, many years to come. So it accelerates the drug approval process. That's how you build a system that creates shared value for everyone.
So interesting, Erich. So we actually have a live question from the audience if you're willing and ready.
Yeah, there we go.
Great. So what business models or types of companies are you using and or seeing to create shared value? Is it a B Corp, social impact funds? Would you say there are types of companies, and what might you recommend for our listeners right now?
I mentioned Lemonade earlier, I believe. Lemonade is a good example of a B company, but I don't think we need to go this far. I think the key to business, you can be a traditional pipeline company or traditional value chain company, the incumbents, so to speak. And you can build a network of connections, of participation, and you can leverage these technologies, and you don't have to be a B Corp. The question is, how do you design the system so that everybody benefits in the system? And this is what in my book I call designing the interaction field. Namely, how do you design the interactions between every participant? How do you create an architecture and the governance structure? And what really breaks down, Maria, is that those governance rules, those governance structures do simply not exist. At Lemonade, as a small example, it actually is there, because it says, if you sign up as a homeowner for that policy, you also need to sign up for the charity part of the business. You cannot just say, I want to save all my money and it's for me to decide. No, you're part of that system. So you need to design those governance rules of the interaction field that you create of your business model, so that properly a sharing of value creation actually takes place.
Oh, that's incredible. And thank you so much, Erich, for answering these live questions. So to everyone in the audience, we have a great number of people with us live. Please submit your questions in the Q&A function and or the chat. We would love to field them here. Erich is an expert in this area and is able to clearly on the fly give us some great expertise and wisdom. So we would actually love to include your voice in this conversation. So Erich, maybe let's step back for a second. Would you be willing to share a little bit about yourself now that we've actually heard some of your expertise and some step-by-steps on how companies in our audience might design to and become an interaction field company? Give us a little bit of information about yourself and how you've actually developed this method.
Yes, I've been about 6 years ago, I became aware of a Nobel Prize winning idea. Won the Nobel Prize in 2014 based on an economic paper in 2004. Two French economists. And I realized back then that something fundamentally is changing, is that traditional firms that run the pipeline business, and namely a traditional value chain of producing a car, the ultimate driving machine for BMW or Mercedes or Audi, those are good businesses. They are good at capturing value, but in this new world we live in, they are not very good at creating new value. On the other hand, startups are oftentimes known for creating new value. And why is that so? I realized when I read this work is that value creation shifts from the factory, from having the best design, the best manufacturing, the best products, and that value creation and the best marketing and everything shifts from creating value inside the firm to creating value in an ecosystem, or what I call an interaction field. And I realized that these technologies that we have, you can call it whatever you want to, machine learning, AI, all the computing technologies, they all do one thing. Mobile phones, they do one thing. They increase the connectivity. They basically build an interaction field. And so I said value creation shifts from that supply side to the demand side. And so 6-7 years ago, I said, I got to do more work in this area. And some clients at my company, Vivaldi Group, then hired us. And so I sort of practiced and learned together with our clients in building these business models.
Oh, fantastic, Erich. So helpful to hear that background and to really clearly understand. I think we know, and as we spoke about a little bit earlier, a few days ago, how incredibly important the communal aspect and the shared value aspect in really building that ecosystem out. So thank you for that context. And I think this is a great follow-up question, especially from the context of your past through this moment in time. Right now, companies in every industry are transforming as they navigate the disruptions brought on by this pandemic. So in your book, you identify a new way to transform a company for the future. Mm-hmm. What current advice, what distilled expertise might you advise to founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs right at this moment?
You know, one of the most important things for me is we need to fundamentally change how we think. I grew up in a world of competition. There's always somebody to beat up. The dominant world is disruption. And it's always killing somebody or crushing somewhere. You know, crushing a retail business when you're an online business, crushing some incumbent. And the assumption is always the traditional business, they just don't get it. They're not fast enough, they don't smart enough, don't under consumer enough. And I think we need to stop thinking about disruption and the idea of competition. Because in this world, if you really want to scale your business, which was the #1 question, nobody can do it alone. You gotta build it together with what I call participants in an interaction field. You gotta design your business model, not just in order to compete against another competitor, but in order to build and stand on the shoulders of giants and also smaller players. That's the success factor. So this idea of participation, engagement, connection, and interaction rather than competition. That is where I would start thinking about. I have a problem with this idea that we go into a design workshop and we all think about user experience and the user. Only drug dealers are exclusively focused on users. What we must do is not just users, and that's fine, it's important, but we need to see that there are many other players and participants that create value for the user experience, for a user. And we need to bring all of those together. You know, I can give you an example on this one.
Please do.
Think about it. I was just reading up on, in September this year, there was this great company that called Movie Pass. If you like to watch movies, this was a really good deal. For $10 of a subscription a month, you could go to a movie theater and watch a movie every day. Now that, if you live in New York City and you know the prices of our movie theaters here, that's a real deal. Guess what happened? The users were very happy. Hey, that's a great value proposition. Great subscription, let's sign up. And they signed up in the millions. Here's the problem. And of course, how did this work? It was also good for Movie Pass, because Movie Pass suddenly became very valuable because they scaled very quickly with a lot of users. But here's the problem. Who suffered in this equation? Who suffered in the equation is the theater themselves. Hollywood liked it because they got more viewing of their movies. But the participant in that interaction field that suffered was the theater. And the theater says, I'm not making money if people come for very little money and come to watch all the movies, because I charge $20 or $15 for one showing, and now I see these same people through the whole month. So the way you design an interaction field is so that the interactions among the major participants are fairly distributed, so that everybody has a shared value, rather than, in this case, only Movie Pass wins and the users win. So you need to look at those, what the economists also call negative externalities, in order to really drive the business model.
Erich, we have some great feedback already in the chat. We're hearing, finally, a voice of reason, and this is fantastic. We're so excited. So one of our questions here, it's very tactical. What are the skills requested by a company to make this kind of change? What should the new business objectives of companies be in this new context? And I would likely say this is something outlined in your book, but perhaps you can, in a more tactical way, share with our audience right now.
This is a very, very important question. In July this year, there was at MIT, by the Initiative of Digital Economy, a conference, a one-day conference. And one of the themes of the conference is, what is the talent required in order to succeed? And there is a research study that was led by Peter Evans, one of the curators of that conference. The other two conferences are the giants in this business called Marshall Van Alstyne and Jeff Parker from actually Dartmouth College. And what they found is that it requires a skill and upskilling, I think is a fashion word, of certain talent. The reason why this is so, and it's a complex, there's a complex, almost like set of variables that is the required skill. Here's the thing. The reason why this is so important is, and the question is such an important on talent is, it is not the technology alone that drives the advantage. You need to have sort of talent on understanding sufficient technology. Two, it's a strategy question, a business model question. Three, you really, and this is what we succeed here at Vivaldi, need to understand how consumers connect with brands, let's say. So there's the problem with talent is that it requires so many pieces to make this work. So if you are a founder, everybody knows, I started a few companies, the last one here is Vivaldi Groups. What happens is that your team that you start with is the most important success factor. Everybody knows this. And so when you build a platform and ecosystem, you doubly need to think about it. I encourage you to look at the study available from Peter C. Evans. I don't know what C stands for. He is the CEO of the Platform Strategy Institute. And there you can get the study, a chart that says these are the requirements from a talent perspective to be successful with these kind of models.
Thank you so much, Eric. This is fantastic. And what we will do, so everyone listening knows, we will actually make sure that every reference Eric is making, we will include in the resource follow-up email. So if you are searching right now, fantastic. And if not, then you will absolutely get a list of the references that Eric is pointing to.
Don't forget to search my book. It's on Amazon by my name.
Absolutely. Yes, and we will put a link to that in the chat right now. We'll have, let's see,
Appreciate it.
Eric, absolutely.
Namaste.
Oh my gosh, well, all of this incredible expertise you have cultivated, like you mentioned, over the past 5 or 6 years, and it's come together in this incredible book, The Interaction Field. So we are just so grateful that you're willing to share bits and pieces of that book with us today. And you know, everyone can get the absolute and the full scope of this information in that book. So we'll make sure to post that very soon in the chat. So again, a lot of great feedback here. It's something that someone is teaching and not talking about, or I'm sorry, that no one is teaching or talking about. So there's a lot of gratitude happening in the chat as well. We have a great question live from the audience. If you could elaborate how interaction field models boost innovation in a better way than other existing models.
Yeah, the traditional way, and it's a good example, the traditional way of, think of the car industry. Tesla right now is the runaway success in terms of market cap and stock variation. That fact, and everybody now says, oh, Tesla has sort of an innovation advantage. And guess what the car makers are doing? Car makers, and I know this for a fact because I work with some of them, they are now sitting in workshops and huddled down and they say, how do I close the gap between Tesla on this technology and us? And they are all busy with looking at closing the gap on innovation. And I don't think that's the right way to think about it. While the car companies, the existing car companies do that, Tesla actually, if you have heard it 2 weeks ago, said, you know what? We are going to share with everybody our technologies. It's actually a shared innovation. So in this new world, instead of keeping innovation proprietary, you actually share it with everyone. Tesla is a good example. Everybody benefits if they share battery technologies. Let's say if battery technologies are shared by everyone, the cost per battery goes down. You benefit, I benefit, Tesla benefits, the whole industry benefits, because the evolution from a combustion engine to electric is going to happen a lot faster. So I think that's how we have to think about, especially now, and I think we should have realized this now in these last 6 months, particularly, that this is the kind of mindset. The other thing is, I love this concept of the inverted firm. The tradition is always you innovate within, you protect your IP, you defend everything, you have security here and there so nobody can see what you do. Certain parts of your business are closed up because nobody has entry, because this could sort of like be shared somehow. That notion is wrong. Today, especially when you're a startup, when you're a small company, when you're in the, you need to think about how do you innovate outside your firm. So it's called the inverted firm. Rather than inside the firm, you innovate outside the firm. This is possible now through the new technology. So that's I think it's a great question. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a great audience. They're so lively today. Really, really excited about this topic. And everyone, please continue to share in the chat. Make sure you are clicking on share with all panelists and attendees so that we can keep the chat going. And that way you can see what everyone else is asking. And again, please submit in the Q&A. We have quite a few questions in the Q&A as well. So Eric, let's see. We have quite a few questions about shareholders and stakeholders. So I have 2 questions that I would like to ask you. The first one, give me one moment.
Yeah.
The first one is, are there examples of companies that are really trying to add value to all stakeholders, not only shareholders? And how do we actually create value across all stakeholders as opposed to only shareholders?
Yeah, good example. I have plenty of examples in my book, but in the beginning chapters, I have a company called John Deere. And we all know farming. And we all know John Deere has the best, one of the best tractors to harvest and do everything on the farm you need. If you're a farmer, you need a John Deere. You ride a Deere, if you will. We all know that. But here's what John Deere also does. And there is value creation. They're a $30 billion company, so no questions about it. Now, here's another thing they do. John Deere distributes sensors over a field. Let's say thousands of farms actually in this country. Sensors that can measure at the square foot level, what's the soil condition, what's the water condition, what's the plant condition, and so forth and so forth. They aggregate those data together from thousands and thousands of farms in the what's called the John Deere open platform. They aggregate it. They add new data to it, data like weather data and many, many other data. And then they share back the data to the farmers. And for the first time, the farmer actually can compare his farm relative to the neighbor farm, relative to the farm in Oklahoma versus Kansas and Nebraska and whatever you may think. And for the first time, farmers can learn from each other. Because as you know, farmers are not that willing normally to share data. But now they create share value for farmers. Now here's the trick. John Deere also shares the data with BASF, with DuPont, with the fertilizer company, with the crop companies that produce ideal crops for particular soil conditions. With universities, with the US Department of Agriculture, and so on. And suddenly there's an entire interaction field that all serves to create shared value, not only for everybody, all the participants, not just the shareholders of John Deere, for everyone who works in agriculture, and most importantly for farmers. But here's the trick, Maria. It's not just that they serve farmers. They also serve the industry. They eliminate problems the industry has. 40% of the water that is really important for us as human beings, 40% is wasted because it never reaches the plant. So now the farms come together and says, how can we solve for that? And most importantly, there are, even in America, believe it or not, 40 million Americans are still hungry, are not served well, healthy food. So with the ability to improve the productivity of the farms through that interaction field, John Deere not only serves farmers, it serves the industry, everybody in the industry, and it serves a larger question of hunger in the United States of America, 40 million people that still don't eat well.
Amazing, Erich. Thank you. We have so many questions about this. Let's see. So one point from the audience, great point on Tesla, Erich. Disruption, hoarding, innovation, thinking has ran its course. Great comment. Thank you so much for placing that in the chat. We have a really great question again about the shared value and stakeholders. Is it possible that shared value may create conflict for certain stakeholders in the ecosystem? And if that does happen, how do we rise above it?
Yes, that is really a very important question, because as I mentioned with the movie pass example, it creates a conflict for one. In the case of the car industry, you mentioned that example, Tesla doesn't have dealers. There are a lot of dealers here in New Jersey, where I live, where we, the New Yorkers, go on Saturday and actually look for a car. And so dealers are suffering in this, because the success of Tesla has to do with the fact that they have a direct connection with you and me, that you are buying it from Tesla and not just from another entity that merely is interested of making money on service and a buck or two on selling you a car of the dealer. So there, in this case, in the car industry, the dealers are, as a retailer, a very important group in the current business model, are disadvantaged. What you need to do is that the problem with currently the thinking is, if you just think from a company perspective, you are doing what's best for the company. If you think from an interaction field perspective, then you say, so how are we dealing with those negative contingencies for those parties? How do we bring them in, and what is the value created for them in the system. So it goes back to my book. You know, I have this 4-step approach that you need to follow. And I think to the question of the person in the audience, it is, you need to go through that thinking process, that 4-step process, and eliminate the negative impact. But there is bound to be one, and you can solve for that through the proper architecture, I call it, and governance structure of an interaction field.
So powerful, Erich. Thank you. So I think it sounds as though major social and economic challenges can be addressed if properly designed with an interaction field or as an interaction field company in mind, correct? So does that include the current pandemic? We have a question or two about that specifically.
Yes, it includes the pandemic, because I think the pandemic is a great example that makes it one thing clear: you can't solve for these problems on your own. If you are a self-serving actor, you causing more damage to everyone else. The interaction field idea in this book is to replace the idea of competition with collaboration, with working together to solve these problems. But you know, if you think about it, I have an example in the book. It's a great example from South Africa. The company is called Vitality, Discovery Vitality. They build a system, a health insurance system. And guess what happens? And this is really the beautiful thing of it. If you are a participant of that health insurance system, your average life expectancy increased by 8 years. Now, if you are the age of Maria, like you probably don't think of 8 years a lot. If you are my age, you go like, hallelujah, 8 years, give it to me. I love it. So I think that, and again, it goes back to the question of the pandemic. There is, when you solve this business model, even something as traditional as the insurance business, that's been for ages the same business model, by looking at it through an interaction field perspective, you can solve for something, not just lower insurance premium, which they do have lower insurance rates, lower healthcare costs. They also actually add on the top of the consumers, the members they call them, in 8 years of an increased healthy years, 8 years. The business model is there for 25 years. So they have a proven track record on data to show that. So yes, it is possible. I think we can solve the pandemic issues a lot more using that kind of an approach.
Wonderful. Let's see, we have some questions around bringing in, let's say, board members or partner companies who may not be aware of the interaction field model. How might we do this in a way that is integrated and not necessarily slow, but innovative?
Yes. In my book, I have a model that has three layers. And the first layer is the nucleus. And the nucleus is when you start building what I call interaction velocity, which interaction velocity with your customers. And the interaction velocity is a function of several things. It's again in the book, but it's the frequency of interactions and also the quality of interactions. When you start there, and that's sort of your natural starting point, because you start with the existing customers, many of you. That provides you a fundamental analytical database that there is value to those interactions that you're building. And when you have that, it is much easier with a fact-based real database, if you will, to go back to the board and say, here's how we want to build a business model, than just with the idea of a vision and hope. Hope is not a strategy, I like to say. So if you think of the example of John Deere, when they when they were able to share, they get 1 or 2 farmers to share the right data, and which is interaction quality, and also on a daily basis through these sensors. And a few farmers says, okay, I go along with that. When they did that, and they shared the data with other farmers, and they shared the data with the board of John Deere, the board says, wait a moment, we can create so much more value for farmers by going this way than by selling more tractors or more tractor services, repair services. So let's go this way. So the data convinced typically very conservative farmers who are very close with their data, if you will, and their productivity and profitability of the farm data, and actually say, you know, we share those data. And on that basis, the industry came around and the board came around and built that interaction. So it's a beautiful thing. Same in the healthcare industry. Would you share your most sensitive healthcare data? Yes, you do. If you are a cancer patient, if you are diagnosed and you know that you save other people's life, including your own, through the proper treatment, yes, you do. So I think that convinced the board to share the data with competitors, even Pfizer, Roche, other pharmaceutical companies. So yes, it works, Maria.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I know we have a polling question that you're interested in sharing out. Let's do that now, if that works for you. Then we can actually ask a few additional questions that have to do with this polling question. Let's see. So what percentage of Fortune 500 companies will be deemed interaction field companies as we look ahead to 10 years from now? I'll launch this poll. Thank you. Let's see. And Eric, did you want to give us any context about this question specifically?
Yes. We know that right now the 12 largest companies in the world all are building already in the middle of this, working on interaction field companies. I think in every industry, maybe that's another good way to think about it. In my book, I talk about healthcare. I talk about metal trading, so very much B2B. I talk about Alibaba, that's his basic retail in China. I talk about the agricultural field. I talk about pet food. How about that? Is it important to you, pet food, or is pet care important? Mass pet care is featured. I talk about appliances like Hire. So you see there's fintech companies like Discovery in the financial services. So you see that slowly, if originally this business model were technology based, slowly these models have now sort of have now become sort of part in other industries. So they have almost traveled, spread to other industries. So okay, so there we go. Great. I think that's a great number here. That's a really great number. It is true. I think that's a very good, I think in my opinion, it doesn't matter what you call it. Call it an interaction field, call it a business platform, call it there are so many names, and a value network, call it an ecosystem, digital ecosystem. It doesn't matter. For 85% of the companies, in my opinion, they will in one way or the other become some form of new business model that creates value in this new way. That instead of the typical pipeline pushing out products to this new world. So here we have 50%, 25 to 50%, so 70, 60, 62%, they would say that will be, and I said, that is a very good reflection. I love the audience. Wow, you know, you've got some good people listening to this one. Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, it's so true. Our audience is so lively and intelligent and incredible. We have some really fantastic questions. So, and that actually I think have to do with the question that was just asked. Give me one moment, let's see. So we have some questions. We have actually a pretty specific questions, but perhaps Eric, you can zoom out so it can be a broader answer that will help the majority of those listening in today. There is a company that wants advice on best practices to run a corporation smoothly and successfully with long-term vision to list on NASDAQ. So with that in mind, what are some top key takeaways or points that you might ask them to consider in moving in towards that direction?
Yes. See, Nasdaq, it goes actually, it's a good question because it goes back to the original polling we have about scaling. And when you think about it, and Nasdaq is a tech-heavy business stock market that looks at smaller companies that do an IPO that have an opportunity to scale with a big vision on scaling. And think about it. If you compete on the supply side, on the traditional business model, it's a money of investments. It's a question of investments. It's a question of assets. You need to build factories. You need to invest in marketing. You need to invest in the brand. You need to create some proprietary technologies, and it's very, very hard to scale that. Obviously, there is a limit to that option. If you scale on the demand side on these kind of business models, it's a much better, much more what I call asset light approach. For example, if you need logistics, you have an idea for a retail concept, you can actually post your merchandise as a third-party seller on Amazon, and Amazon also takes care of the fulfillment. So you can actually piggyback on an existing platform or digital ecosystem. So if you think of becoming a Nasdaq-listed company, I think that the scaling opportunities using these new business models that Nasdaq is looking for, investors at Nasdaq companies look for, I think is much higher chance of scaling with a reasonable investment than it is with a traditional way. So I think that's what I would look for. I would look for that approach to building your business.
Thank you, Eric. We actually have a follow-up question from Antonella, specifically about listed companies in the future. What do you think will be the new benchmarks through which analysis will be assessed? And what are the new values? Which of those two are more important, and how different will they be from right now?
That is also a huge question. It reminds me of a politics now when I say huge. It's a huge question because there is a large conversation in the economy among policy experts and economists and more, that our traditional way of measuring value is really flawed. The traditional value the traditional approach is cross-national product, GNP, or value add in a factory. And this new way of creating value there's these new measurements that are coming about. There's this one woman, she's a professor at Wharton, Mazadur. I will provide the source of a book that she wrote on what is the proper measurement. Stiglitz, another economist, she I think worked together with him on that, a famous economist, that talk about the new way of measuring. And I think that the short answer to that is that the new way of measuring takes into consideration that shared value creation. So when you see, I think one professor at Boston University, I mentioned the name earlier, Marshall van Alstyne, he said it very nicely. The way you need to think of value is you need to give back more than you take. And that's not necessarily the formula right now. So, but anyway, that's a huge discussion. It's actually, may I suggest, it's also in the book. In the last chapter, I said, this is such an important question. I need to address that. So I have some thoughts on that, on how you do the measurement of the new value creation.
Erich, thank you so much. We have a really interesting thought and question from Peter in our audience that I would love to share. And everyone, again, the link to the book is in the chat. We would also love to hear from you. We have about 9 minutes, maybe 8 minutes out until the end of the hour. It went by so quickly. So if you wouldn't mind filling out the survey so that Erich and NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center will know exactly what you would like to hear more of, and give Erich some feedback. Let him know what you're thinking about what he has shared in his book so far. We would actually love to hear from you. So Peter says, one potential issue as we're practicing and at the moment, capitalism / startup culture is typically a zero-sum, no-share game. It seems structured to encourage scaling and to grow very fast. And certainly the market leaders or the companies in a monopoly position may have weak motivation to follow an interaction field strategy. A company that tries to follow an interaction field strategy maybe is going to be more vulnerable. So this is Peter's thought. I'm curious, Erich, do you have any thoughts in regards to Peter's question / comment?
I think that's an interesting question, but it assumes that the market is constant and it's growing at a normal maybe population rate. That's where the zero-sum question comes in. The idea of disruption, the idea of competition is really the wrong idea here. And that is, my market share gains are your market share losses. Or somebody wins, somebody loses. But what we have seen, let's take the example of the agricultural field, that actually everybody wins. It is true that until before fertilizer companies would recommend and sell to the farmers by the pound the fertilizers and says, you want your crop to grow? We are going to put more fertilizer on there because it's much better it grows your fruit much faster, you make more money. And everybody piled into the farmer and says, I have the better crop, I have the better way of cutting or the better tractor, I have the better this. And it was, if now the fertilizers is more sparingly used, fertilizer companies are losing in some ways because they can't sell anymore by the pound. But what actually happened is actually the opposite. The entire demand for food actually has grown. So the market actually has grown. So fertilizer companies may sell less to the farmers, but in total, they have a more demand for fertilizers because everybody has now said, hey, it worked on this farm, on that farm, it works on other farms. So I think the beauty of these models is that it's not just defining an existing market. It actually creates entire new market opportunities. There is only, in the car industry, there is only so many cars that you can sell every year, and you don't really need that many cars that we sell right now. But if you don't think as a car company and just in terms of selling cars, if you think of mobility, you have a much bigger opportunity set, a much bigger market to play with. And that's what car companies also experience right now. So yes, the answer lies in growing the pie for everyone.
Thank you, Erich, so much. Fantastic response. And thank you all, absolutely. And thank you all for sharing so much in the chat. So I think we have time for one more question. We're going to circle back to the startup community, which I would say is our general audience here. And we have quite a few questions about product development and validating and how to use this model if you are a startup that is looking to perhaps scale and grow and simultaneously validate your business. So Erich, I'm curious if there are a few key points, 2 to 3 key points that you might be able to share specifically for startups. Yeah.
I think that there are 4 things you got to do. Number 1, you need to start framing and framing that in the action field. If you're a pet company and you sell dog food, let's say, or pet food, are you a dog food company with the best dog food, or are you taking care of people's I'm sorry, pets' health, maybe also owners, people's health. Are you a car company or are you a mobility company? So the framing of the opportunity is one of the most important. In one of the chapters, I talk about Lego. Is Lego about bricks that you put together in order to play? Or what is Lego all about? Is Lego about the joy of building and the pride of creation and things like that? So I have some examples of how you think. That's one. Two is designing the interaction fields. I mentioned the idea of nucleus, ecosystems, and market makers, these three layers. But I think that designing those interaction properties. And you know, if you're a startup, you can actually go in a room, spend a day, or maybe do it over video, and you can sort of like rethink your model. It's amazing. Time and again, when we did this here with our clients, it's amazing how people say, I never thought it. My God, this is really solving some of the major problems we have. So there's a designing part. There are three parts to that. I don't want to go into that. Then the third part is building it. How do you create gravitational pull toward your business model? So that's the third part. And finally, what is those governance rules for sharing out value? How does John Deere share those data, and should they be compensated for that, or should they give them for free? So I think that, so there's these four parts: framing, designing, building, sharing out. I think those are the four areas that I would look at. As a startup, I think it's changing your value proposition, not just to the users or consumers, let's say, but to your entire stakeholder map. And I think when you address the stakeholder map, I think that is when you say, I am going to have a chance of looking at that industry and that category in a new way. You're not going to be, you're not just going to be another mattress companies. You know Casper, but you also know that there are 150 other Caspers out there, other direct-to-consumer mattress companies. So if you just want to copy another one, you do the traditional things. Those four factors, creating the interaction field, help you to go beyond just another model, let's say, of a mattress company. As an example startup. And I think that is really where investors right now are looking at in terms of funding companies, because of the time where we live, these unusual times of the various crises that are sort of converging at the same time.
Peter, thank you so much. That's deep expertise. And I feel like this conversation could go on so much longer than the 60 minutes we've been
talking. The dog is waiting behind you.
Yes, is that right? Oh, the life of working at home. Erich, I just want to ask before we end, do you have any final words of wisdom to share?
You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and we say we can talk with great enthusiasm about this, and I like what Steve Jobs once said: stay humble, stay foolish. And I think that in this day and age, staying humble and foolish and being on that side of the equation, I think goes a long ways, and tough it out, So I think and make it work. I think the beautiful thing is that these day and age, we have the possibilities of pulling out of things, and some of these business models go a long way to do that. So that's what I get excited about it.
Oh, fantastic. Erich, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our community, to share your insights, and to set such a fantastic overview of your book and also this work that you've been doing for many, many years. Yeah. I know that the community has benefited so much from it. So
thank you.
You're welcome. So much. Thank you. On behalf of NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we're so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. And a few final comments to our audience today. Please take a look at Erich's book. The link is in the chat, and also the link to our survey. We would love to hear from you, and we know Eric would love to hear from you as well. And finally, we would love for you to join us for any upcoming webinars and events that we have going on. So Tuesday, September 29th, leveraging AI technology to attract and engage your stakeholders, and daily habits and practices and practical strategies for sales and success. That is actually next Wednesday. So we were really looking forward to having you. Thank you so much. To everyone still listening in, we hope you have a fantastic day. Again, Eric, thank you for your presence and your expertise and wisdom today.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. Bye. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.